Hey guys, it's Christy and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be ranking the 8 oldest eyeshadow palettes in my collection. So before we get into it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and let's get into it. Alright, so this video was definitely inspired by Samantha March's kind of series she's been doing over on her channel, but also just thinking about doing more videos surrounding makeup that I already have in addition to my reviews. I will always be a review channel, but I also want to do a lot more content surrounding makeup I already have. So I decided to look back on eyeshadow palettes. And to be fair, I don't have a ton that are super old. I seem to be doing pretty well in that aspect, but let's just get into it. So coming in at number 8, this one is actually from Smashbox, and this is their Cover Shot Petal Metal eye palette. I don't even know if they make these anymore. I think they might. And you can tell this one is very lightly used, and I think it's really pretty. I really do. It's definitely a very easy to work with neutral color story. I think the problem is just that you only get 2 mattes and then that's it. So I think for me, I just didn't like how shimmer heavy it was. They're also not the most impactful shimmers. So I think for that reason, I just really haven't used this as much as I should have. But I think it's a good palette. I think it's a good formula. I don't hear anybody talk about these anymore, so that kind of tells me how old this is. And, you know, it's not the most amazing formula. There's definitely formulas that are better, but it's not bad by any means. But I think these are also just really expensive for what they were. So I think, you know, a combination of only having 2 mattes in here, I love a good neutral color story, we know that. So I'm not really sure why I haven't reached for this much, but this one is definitely at number 10 because I haven't used it much. You only get 2 mattes, and I just have formulas that I like that are better. This isn't bad, it's just not as good as some of the others. Coming in at number 7 is from Dominique Cosmetics, and this is the Latte palette. So this one's definitely had a lot more use than the Smashbox, but it's also still pretty lightly used. My mattes in here have some use out of them, that is for sure. These shades here don't really. These shimmers have a little bit. And this palette is really pretty. I think what always threw me off about that is these 2 random pops of color that just really don't seem to fit in this very neutral palette. And while I'm all for a pop of color in a neutral palette, I feel like there needs to be something to anchor them, and I feel like these just didn't really have it, if that makes sense. So for that reason, I don't think I reach for this the most. I also just don't love this formula as much. The mattes are fine, but I feel like the shimmer formula just isn't my favorite. So for that reason, I really just haven't reached for this that much. So between the shimmers and these random pops of color that do throw me off, this one is definitely ranking a little bit lower. It's fine, it's just not a favorite. Okay, number 6 is actually from MAC. And I actually love MAC shadows. I know not a lot of people talk about them anymore, except when they come out with a really weird collab, but I still really love MAC shadows. I don't think their shimmers have the most impact, but overall they still have a really great go-to nostalgic formula. They really do. I actually have a palette with just a whole bunch of MAC singles that I still really love and reach for all the time, especially when I'm not filming. But coming at number 6 is the MAC and Selena palette. So this one is only from 2020, but it's still one of the older ones in my collection. I did love this. I love that it was a collab with Selena, so very nostalgic. And you can tell the packaging is absolutely stunning. I think they killed it with this packaging. The thing I don't really like is the color story. So the formula is great. It really is. It's definitely a MAC. It's definitely a great formula. My problem is these colors just don't jive the best. You know, you have these for brown neutral mattes out here and they work great, but then in the middle, I just don't feel like this works that well. This fuchsia with the red, and then you have these 2, which very much have a certain rosiness to them, and they go well with the neutrals, but these 2 I think throw me off because I can't really see where they should be going in a look. I just don't think it's my favorite color story. I think it's pretty, it's just not a favorite. And then because there is a red shadow in here, I do not use red shadow. at all. So for me, that definitely throws me off. Again, the neutrals are beautiful. It's just these two that really throw me off with this one, and I think have kind of prevented me from using this one more. Okay, coming in at number 5 is actually a Morphe palette, and this is their 9T Neutral Territory palette. I think this was one of my very first palettes when I was really getting into eyeshadow. So this one has some age, but this is a perfect neutral palette. And the formula is also still perfectly fine. So I really do like this one. I liked it a lot at the time. I still actually like it a lot. I haven't reached for it in a while, which is part of why I'm putting it a little bit lower. I know the shimmers don't have the most impact as well, but overall, this is such a user-friendly, perfect neutral palette. I really do like this. I know Morphe gets a lot of slack, and I get it, but I do think that their formula is fine. I don't think there's really anything wrong with their formula, at least in my experience, but this is a perfectly fine palette. I really need to leave it out because it really is quite good, and I don't know why I don't reach for it more. I really did like this one. This was a great beginner palette. This is just a great everyday palette, so I do really like this one. I guess there's just 4 that I like a little bit better. Okay, coming in at number 4 is from Urban Decay, and this is their Naked Reloaded palette. So I love this one. This one has a similar color story to the ABH Sultry palette, which is also an old palette, but it's not old to me. I picked it up at the end of 2020 when they restocked them temporarily, so it's not old to me, which is why it's not going to be in this video. But this reminds me a lot of that color story. I think this is a really easy formula to work with. The neutrals are perfect. They're really pretty, very everyday. Again, very easy to work with. Not the most impact, but I think we kind of have come to expect that from Urban Decay. They're just a very user-friendly formula. They're not going to make you work too hard, but they're also not going to be too pigmented and give you too bold of a look when you're really just going for an everyday easy eye look. You can definitely glam this up, but you can also dress it down for every day. So I really like this one. I think this is a really great underrated palette from Urban Decay. I don't know, I feel like this really doesn't get talked about very often, but I do think this is one of their best ones in my honest opinion. Okay, the next one at number 3 is also from Urban Decay, and this is the Naked Honey palette. I just think this is a really great palette. This is such a beautiful neutral color story. This one, the golds definitely pull a little too yellow in here for me. Maybe this one should have been switched with Reloaded, but I think the formula in here is so good. So if I just stay away from those 2 middle ones, I love this color story so much. So I really do love this. I think it's perfect for any time of the year. It's just beautiful. It's got these like, again, I think it's this bright gold that I actually don't like, but it kind of gives me that bright sunny vibe that makes me think of spring, but then it's also got these warm neutrals that remind me of fall. So I just love this palette. The formula is great. A lot of the same comments I have toward the Naked Reloaded. It's easy to work with, very beginner friendly. It's not going to pack too much impact, but it's going to perform very well and be very easy to blend. So I really do love this one. And coming at number 2 is from ABH, and this is the Soft Glam palette. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I really do kind of miss their velvet packaging. I don't know what it is. I really enjoyed it personally, but this color story is so beautiful. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this palette really does have a lot of use out of it, particularly tempera and burnt orange. I just love burnt orange for a really good crease shade. Orange soda is a beautiful transition. And then these 2 are so beautiful. And the shimmers are also gorgeous. I love this palette. This is such a great go-to when I don't know what to do, or if I'm just wanting neutrals. This is where I tend to go. I love this palette a lot. So I think this is such a classic ABH palette. It's got a perfect color story, honestly, in my opinion. So I rank this one at number 2, and the formula is still holding up just fine, so I'm not complaining. And coming in at number 1 is from Taupe Beauty. So this one makes me so sad because you cannot get this anymore. I loved this palette so much. I still do. I don't use it as much because I know I can't replace it or get it again. This palette I love so much. So I love Aura. I love it. I use this one all the time to set my eye primer. It's got a solid dip out of it. I think if I worked on this one, I could definitely hit pan soon. And Soothe was the best crease shade ever. Love it. And then I dabbled a little bit in Ritual, and Memory is just such a good liner option. And then the metallics are pretty, but this is the one I go to when I want to do something glittery. I love, love, love her glitters in here. I definitely don't think you need to use a glitter glue, but it definitely will help with a little bit of fallout. There's not a ton. This is a really amazing glitter formula, but I love this palette. I love how she laid it out. I love the textures. I love the color story, and I'm so sad you can't get this anymore, and I'm even sadder that there isn't going to be more. But this is definitely my favorite of the older palettes in my collection. And that is it for me today. That is the 8 oldest palettes in my collection. Thank you so very much for watching. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload at least 3 new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!